All right, y'all. So one of my students, he just had a question asking me, can you drop something extensive going over how to look at a chart and recognize when you're at a broad information? So I'm about to answer that for you guys. So if you're trying to figure out how to trade the broad informations and you trade the strat, but you don't particularly know how to do that or you're struggling with it, this video should help you. So the goal of broad informations is to identify a higher high or a lower low, right? Whenever a broad information is a series of higher highs and lower lows. The point of broad information is prices expanding, right? It is demonstrating that buyers like to buy at the low, sellers like to sell at the high, and it's going back and forth, letting buyers get what they want, sellers get what they want, right? So the goal is to identify when price creates a higher high and a lower low, because again, if the series goes higher high or lower low, it doesn't matter, by the way, it doesn't matter which it starts with. The goal is to have one or the other, right? If I get a lower low, I'm expecting price to potentially go and create a higher high. When I get a higher high, I'm expecting price to potentially go create a lower low. So if we create a lower low, then we create a higher high, then we create a lower low, I can expect price to do what? Potentially create a higher high, right? If price creates a higher high, I could potentially expect price to create a lower low. It's a back and forth process, right? So the goal is to identify when those happen and then be able to take actionable signals to target the other side of the thing that did not specifically happen. So if we identify here, right? So again, the point is to identify higher lows, right? I mean, higher highs and lower lows. So let's do that. Just from this chart, right? I'm looking at this and I can clearly see that, we're on an uptrend and stuff like that, but I see we have some obvious, like a pivot highs, for example, right? We have a pivot high here, pivot low, and then we have a pivot high right here, right? So I can identify those and I can literally mark out and connect those highs together. So if this is a previous high, right? Doesn't matter necessarily which one for this one. And then I can connect it to the current high, right? I'll use this one only because, it makes it a little bit cleaner, but you can use either or of these. The point isn't necessarily to get these lined up as well. Like I also want to, hold on, let me go full screen real quick. The point of broad informations and drawing these lines and stuff like that is not to get them precise and all that other stuff. The point is to identify where was price expanded, right? Price expanded higher. That's why I'm drawing the top of the broad information. I'm connecting a high to a higher high, showing that buyers were aggressive, took out a previous high, and now they're taking it higher and higher and higher, and I'm graphing that out as a line. So I wanted to be very clear on that. It doesn't necessarily matter being particular with all the lines and stuff like that. I want you guys to focus on why I'm doing it and the point, and then also what you can do with it, like to create winning positions in the market. So let's do it. So I've identified that. I'm gonna refine it like this just to make it a little bit cleaner, that's all. But these are a series of higher highs and lower lows, right? So we have a high, we have a low, and we have a higher high, right? Now, if you notice, you're probably like, why didn't I connect this one to this one? So I can just look at this and tell that this low did not take out this low. So I would not draw this from this low connecting to this low right here. Even though this was reversal, it did create a low. I don't want to connect it to that one. If I did connect it to anything, I would connect it to this previous low. Why? Because this low right here is watch this, a lower low to this low right here based on the candles, based on this daily chart, right? It is not a lower low to this candle. Therefore, sellers were not aggressive enough to take out that previous low. So I would graph it to this one. I know it doesn't look as pretty. I know it doesn't look ugly. But again, what is the point? The point is to identify what? I said it up at the top. Identify when price creates a higher high and when price creates a lower low. So price created a lower low to this candle. It didn't do it of this candle. So whoever was still in this candle, they still could be fighting. They still could be fighting to defend their position. But everybody that was in this candle that was trying to buy, that push price higher, they're stopped out of the position. They're done for. And that's actually why we had such an aggressive move to the downside, as you can see, right? Now let's play it forward a little bit. So boom, this is the daily candle. We had a huge daily candle to the downside. Now I can redraw the broad information. Why would I redraw the broad information? Because this candle right here took out a series of previous lows. So I can start identifying, okay, what lows did this take out? So if I were to draw it just from, let's say for example, I drew it from this low to this low, right? I can clearly see we clearly took out that low. 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 We took out that low. We took out that low. And we also took out this low. So this whole series of lows, we stopped those people out. Why is that important? Everybody that was buying here, right? They have to exit and sell to get out of their position. Why do you think this candle moves so fast? Right? This candle moved so aggressively to the downside because sellers were aggressive. They wanted price to go down. Everybody that was previously buying here had to exit their position for a loss, which then added more fuel to selling pressure to the downside, like pushing price down because everybody's exiting and getting out of position, right? So this helps us identify and say, okay, bet, we just stopped out from a price perspective on SPY, right? We just stopped out about almost $20 worth of basically buyers that were previously in the market. So if they were to come back and into the market again, right? So again, if we just stopped out a whole bunch of buyers, then guess who's left? We have a whole bunch of sellers. That is $21 worth of sellers. And you might be saying, well, why does that matter? I'm gonna show you in a second. That's $21 worth of sellers. So that means that everybody that was here trying to aggressively sell this thing to the downside, they're now winning in a winning position for now on betting on the market going down. So let's see how that plays out for them in the future. Price gaps back up and we're bullish. So this is where price is kind of going back and forth. Now, in terms of the broadening formation, like redrawing it, right? I think also if I wanted to redraw it just from the current, like the most recent lower low and the most recent higher high, I can do it like this. So I can redraw it. I think this one, this high, this right here took out this previous high. So that is this candle right here. This is a higher high to this high. So if I redraw that, that was the last high before we had a bearish reversal to the downside. So this was the last, so watch this. This is the last place that sellers were at. So the last seller is right here because the last person to get into a sell position is at 673.94. So now when I'm targeting like where I want price to go and stuff like that, when we reverse, I'm going to make note of that to get into a position. So right here, we have a bearish outside candle right here. So now when we're in the middle of the broadening formation, we're kind of doing nothing. We're kind of just chopping up and stuff like that. I'm looking to see, can we get a actionable signal to take ourselves back to the upside? Watch this. We have two options. We're in the middle. We have two options. We just, watch this. We took out a high. We just took out a low. What's the next thing I'm looking for price to do? Potentially go up and take out the high. I'm not going to say that that is exactly what we're going to do, but I'm saying that that is the psychology of buyers and sellers. Whenever we create a new high, sellers want to step in. Whenever we create a new low, buyers want to step in, right? So right here, I want to look to see if we can get a bullish actionable signal on the daily time frame. So let's see if we can do that. I'll drop down to like the 2-hour time frame just to make this a little bit better. 2 and place price action out. So we end up reversing to the upside, right? So we start reversing, we start pushing down, playing around a little bit. So that is a 3-2, watch this, that is a 3-2 bullish reversal to the upside. Why is that a bullish reversal? Because this is a bearish outside bar, right? So if I turn on the indicator for y'all, and I'm gonna do a video also on like different strat indicators that can help you, even though you don't need strat indicators and stuff like that to help you, but if you want to, I have a couple that you can use. I'll make a video on that. But this is a 3-2 bullish reversal to the upside. So guess what I can do? I can enter a trade here if I wanted to. So let's just say I got SPY, for example, on calls or something like that. Once it breaks above this high, that is a bullish actionable signal for me to get into this trade on the daily time frame. So that's at 665. Guess what I can do? It's at 665. Bet I can get 6. And there's no right or wrong answer. Again, just ask yourself from a feasible perspective, right? How long, right? There's two things you should ask yourself when it comes to picking an options contract and doing this for options and swing trading, right? How long do you think it should take for your target, AKA whatever strike price that you have, right? Strike price to get hit. And then what strike price makes sense that it can hit? Meaning, if I'm on SPY, do I want to put a $700 call on right here and then get that thing out for a week? No, that doesn't make sense because do I believe it can hit $700, right? How long do you think it should take and what strike price should I get? Do I think it can hit $700 in 1 week? The answer to that is no. So do I believe it can hit within maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks? I believe it could probably hit 675. Because if I give it some time, that's only a $10 move. If we fully reverse that, buyer step into the market, we can fully reverse that. I actually played this not on SPY, but on QQQ. I literally put $6,000 into QQQ calls. Those things were up 290%. And I literally took this trade not on SPY. So if I go to QQQ right now, that was a 122, if I'm not mistaken, that was a 122 bullish reversal to the upside. It took a couple weeks, but then right after it did that, it started pushing to the upside. So let me switch over to QQQ just to show you what it looked like. Boom. 1, 2 down, 2 up reversal. That was my entry. I put $6,000 into that, right? Betting on it going higher. I got if I'm not mistaken, I got 615 calls. I got 615 calls because it was playing around that 615 level. And then it started going crazy. So matter of fact, I'll play that out for you. This also did the same thing. And also, this is a cheat code to help you identify the broad informations better. You can switch this from candlesticks and switch this to the line chart. And if you take you don't have to have the strat numbers on there, but let's just say the strat numbers aren't on there, right? Just pretend they're not on there, or I can just turn them off, honestly. Boom, turn them off like that. You clearly see what you clearly see when price created a higher high and when price created a lower low. Boom, connect that, connect that. Super easy. This high went higher than this one. This low went lower than this one. Super easy. When I go back to the candlesticks, boom. This, and I'll just adjust them a little bit. But again, this was a previous pivot high. Reverse to the downside. I'll drag this down, redraw it. So this didn't create a lower low to this candle, but it did create it to this one, and that's what so this line chart is not precise, but it helps you get a ballpark estimate of identifying the higher high and lower low a little bit easier. Then you'll just refine it on the candlestick chart. So this low right here, this candle right here took out this previous low, right? And now that we took out that previous low, I'm looking to see if we can get a bullish reversal. I took that bullish reversal. So if we play this out on the daily chart, I'll play this out some more. It played around a little bit, but again, we kept playing around. We were reversing back and forth and stuff like that, but I didn't care because I knew what we were gonna do. We gapped up, we hit that it hit. I was in the money, 615. It hit that, and then that thing started going crazy to the upside, and we had no reversal, right? We had a 2 up. So watch this. Beautiful. We had a low, higher high, lower low. We took out this previous high, so guess what? We have a higher high. And then that just keeps expanding. That just kept expanding to the high, to the high, to the high, to the high. And then we had a bearish reversal. I exited at the top of there around 630 and stuff like that. That was a 290% play on QQQ. So you do the math if I put in 6K. But again, I put in 6K because I was confident in the trade working out because I understood broad informations. And I called this out for the group, if I'm not mistaken. When was that? Tuesday, October 14th, October 15th. Yeah. So, but again, that's the power of broad informations, and that's pretty much how you will use them. We also have some other examples of that too from a shorter term perspective. So right here, you'll also notice, and it created a high, right? So this created a high relative to this previous high that we had, right? And then we can redraw it. So you don't need to have that right there necessarily. You can just delete that for now. We did create a lower low to this previous candle. If we get a bullish reversal to the upside, we potentially can reverse and go up to the upside. So let's just see what we do. We do reverse to the upside. It gaps up a little higher, but again, we reverse to the upside. So now I'm trying to see, okay, can we create a higher high from this, or are we going to play around and potentially expand a little bit lower? So we decided to go a little bit lower. So that's fine, right? But I want to do it like this. So without the broad information, right, I want to make a note of this real quick. So we have this previous higher high and we have this previous lower low created, correct? But I want to show you guys something. There are smaller broad informations that are also occurring and stuff like that as well. And I want to touch on that a little bit later, but I don't want you guys to box your mind into how broad informations work. If you just want to trade the bigger broad informations, this is what I'm showing you right now. This is the way to do it. So we go down, right? And you see we go down, we take out that previous low. We're expanding the broad information lower, right? We didn't take out a high yet. We're expanding price lower. That's okay, right? And just to, I guess, show a little bit of the smaller broad informations, anytime you can connect any higher high and any lower low to create a broadening formation. Anytime we see price take out a previous low right here, and then we take out a previous high here, consolidated, we expanded a little bit higher right there, and then we reversed. Where are we reversing back through? Price took out this previous low, took out a previous high, and now guess what we're doing now? We took out this previous low. So that is a way of like identifying the smaller broadening formations. But the point for swing trading is so you can catch that bigger move. So we need to be patient and wait for it. So we're 2 down in green, we're inside bar, we went 2 down again. So you can play these shorter terms to the downside, but all that's doing is what? Expanding the broadening formation even lower than that. So we took out this low and we took out this low. Not this one. This is the last one that we took out. So now you see how our broadening formation is getting wider and wider and wider. That is exactly what we want to see. So we get a 2 up, we get a 2-2 reversal to the upside, which is cool. However, we still want to pay attention to continuity. Continuity on the weekly is still kind of bearish around that point, coming off of this like low being created and stuff like that. And this was also a weak, very, very weak 2 up. But again, that was still an actual signal. But again, the week was still bearish at that point. So in this case, we have Thursday, right? So Thursday, we have a giant bearish candle. So we took out this previous low. We took out this one, we took out this one, we took out this one. We didn't take out this one just quite yet, but we did take out this one. So we stopped out a lot of lows from people that were still buying and trying to hold it. We stopped all those people out. But notice how the trade that I had taken from here up until here was 27 points, right? And I made 290% on that trade. But this trade right here, right, if we get some type of bullish reverse off of this, because that was a very strong candle. We've done this before. Literally, look, think about that song. If he did it before, y'all, you know what I'm saying. But we had a strong sell-off. Buyer started stepping back in. Strong sell-off. Buyer start stepping back in. That is a 2 down in green, right? So that is a failed 2 down, right? So I can look to take this trade to the upside. And guess who took this trade to the upside? Not on QQQ, but this time on SPY. Yours truly. Right, so I took the 670 call literally around when we had that reversal to the upside, and it's up 62%. It was up like 70-80%, but you know, we've been having some pullbacks and stuff. But I put 5,000 in that, similar to what I did before with QQQ, and I'm up to now $8,000 on that position currently. Right, but we had the same setup across the board. We had a 3-2 reversal on QQQ, on SPY. We also had a 3-2-2 reversal as well. It did the exact same thing. So just looking at the chart, if you're struggling with seeing the broadening formation, draw this out, right? So this created a higher high to this. We created a lower low to that, but this also created a lower low to this right here, right? So that is a lower low, higher high. What are we trying to do? Trade back through that to go higher, switch this back to the candlesticks and refine it. That's the low. Refine this. That was the previous high. If we want to be real particular about the last previous high that was taken out, it was this one. So this is the last high that was taken out. This was the last low that was taken out before we get a reversal to the upside. And if we play this as if we were trading options, right? Because if we get like 100 contracts, for example, then if we get one options contract, that's 100 shares. So let's just say, I don't know. Let's just say, because I have 4 contracts, so let's just say I get 400 shares of SPY, for example, right? And we'll do like a buy stop just so it can be above it. So let's just play this out and see what this looks like. So we have a 3-2 reversal to the upside, right? Let's say we keep our stop loss, not probably like at this low, but we might get stopped out on shares. Let's just see. I forgot what happened. I think we reversed a little bit. Oh no, we did go. I forgot we did keep going. We reversed it upside, so up $4,000 on that trade. 3-2 reversal is working. So we have a bullish actual signal, a 3, 2 down, and 2 up reversal to the upside. Enter there, rallied, and now I've been in the money since 670. I had 670 calls, right? That thing was rallying, right? It was going crazy, right? Then it's kind of been chopping me up in here to the point where this is where we are present day, right? But that is the power of trading broadening formations. So this trade that I'm currently in, that I'm up 62% on right now, that trade was taken based on a broadening formation. We created a lower low, and I took a bullish actual signal so that we can go back to the all-time highs and create a higher high. And by the time it gets to the all-time high, I'm probably gonna be up 80, 70%, or 80 to 90% on that trade, maybe even 100% if we go a little bit higher than that and hit like 692 or something like that, right? So then I'll have doubled that $5,000, turn that into about $10,000 roughly, just off of this one trade, right? That is the power of broadening formations. So I guess just to clarify, for the bigger broadening formations, it's pretty easy, right? Just identify a swing low, those swing lows and swing highs. So these obvious highs and lows and stuff like that, identify those. When it comes to the smaller ones, the only thing you need to really think about is, did it create a higher high and a lower low? So this outside bar right here, there's a broadening formation here. Where is it at? We created a higher high to that high right there, and then we created a lower low to this. So the broadening formation that was created originally was from here, right? Because we took out this previous low, right? So if we use this candle's range, right? We mark out the high and the low of this. What happened? We created a lower low, we created a higher high, then from there we created a lower low, and then from there we created a higher high. That is called a what? Broadening formation. That is how broadening formations start. Lower low, higher high, lower low, higher high. That is a broadening formation. So whenever we have a series of higher highs and lower lows, that is a broadening formation. So don't overcomplicate it. I know it doesn't look pretty all the time and stuff like that, but just a rule of thumb. I don't care how it looks. Whenever we create a lower low and a higher high, right? You can look for price to create a lower low and then look for price to create a higher high and just go back and forth. You won't be perfect with it, right? The market just does a whole bunch of different things and stuff like that. But the rule of thumb for identifying broadening formations is creating lower lows and higher highs. So literally, you could just turn this magnet tool on right here, and then you just got it practice. Literally, if you need to mark out the highs and lows and stuff like that, do that. But do whatever you need to do to identify when price is taking out a high and when price is taking out a low, and that will be able to help you identify the broadening formations. So, Mike, I hope I helped you out with that, answer to your question and stuff like that. And again, if anybody else has any other questions concerning broadening formations, trading, the strat, whatever that is, drop it in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to create a video on it. Peace.